Hey, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. Good to have you here. The next level lecture, and we have a very special subject again for today. The subject today is the laurel will blossom again. How to keep your pilot light burning. My name is Hans, the Storyteller Nordsiek, and I'm talking from my home country, the Netherlands. For the next 30 minutes, I want to take you in a narrative, in an adventure. We dive deep into history to understand what is happening today. So great you are here. I have a career as an airline pilot. I have a career as a captain on big Boeings. I have a career as a storyteller, as a theater maker, and now I am also a coach, and I help people discovering their hero's journey. I talk from this perspective. Before we start, there's a little warning, and I told that before. The warning is that what I say may seem like fantasy, far-fetched, not from this world, out of this world. And well, just let it sink in. Take the red pill. The word red pill, I mean that if there's any question coming up in your mind, your head, it should be about better understanding. So it's not so much a competition, who knows better, you or somebody else or me, and that is taking the red pill. Let me see. The who, what we're going to investigate all has three re. It's all about redesigning, rediscovering, and reinventing your and our world. This lecture is for those people that think, well, something may be a little bit better in the world than we face it today. And if you think the world is in the perfect place, which it is, of course, and there's nothing to change, nothing to make better, then this may be not the lecture for you. So we talk from this perspective. I'm going to tell you 10 sub-stories, and together it's one story. The title again is The Laurel Will Blossom Again, and the laurel, another name for that is the bay leaf, and how to keep your pilot light burning. As you may be familiar with my lectures, that sometimes it's a very good way to start at the beginning. What does a word mean? Now, we talked already about the words in the title. We talked about laurel, or in English it's the bay leaf. It's a spice, it's a little plant, it's a leaf from a special plant. It's called laurel or the bay leaf. Traditionally, the laurel is being used in soups or stews or food to give it special taste. And there's another meaning. There is also a symbolic meaning for the laurel or the bay leaf. And if you may know, when you see Caesar from the Roman time, he has this crown on his head. It's made of laurel leaves. And laurel is symbolizing the victory and the imperishability of things. Victory and imperishability of things. That is the laurel. A pilot light, if you have like an old heater in your house, like a gas or a fuel heater, what does a pilot light mean? Well, if the flames, yes, a beautiful flame, it's a wooden stove, burner here. If you have a burner on fuel or on gas, you can give it full power. And when you let it go idle, there's always a small flame burning inside the heater. And that's what we call the pilot heater. If the pilot flame goes out, the pilot light goes out, it's impossible to light up again to full extension, to full power. So the pilot light is a very essential thing. In my language we call it the waakvlam. So intuition. What is intuition? intuition is an old word. It means inner tuition. It is giving education to yourself, or in other words, trust your inner knowing. Inner tuition is all about inner knowing, inner tuition. Some time ago, I witnessed a lecture by one of my coaches. His name is George Ross, and George Ross, he's now 93 years old, and he coaches many people. And before I say that, we travel in 10 sub-stories towards what is happening in the world right now, in the crisis, the chaos that we're in. So bear with me when we go through these 10 stories, and then we come to the point. George Ross, he's a businessman, he's a marketing man, very smart man, very funny man. He helped many very important people to come to the position where they are. And George Ross said, once asked, well, now, Mr. Ross, what is in marketing, what is the wisest advice you could give? Well, he said, well, if it rains lemons, learn to make lemon juice. Another one of my coaches is Mike Slate, and you may know him from ESPN. He was the marketing man for Apple for many years. And Mike Slate, he was asked, well, now what is the most important thing to do in your life and to become successful? And he said, well, it's to be yourself. To become or be yourself. Be authentic yourself. And there's another one of our coaches, he's called Billionaire Fred. And he was asked a similar question, Fred, how did you get so successful, also money-wise? He said, well, when I do business, money is not my first goal. My first goal is to be myself and to have fun doing it. And then the end result is you may make a lot of money. So, very successful people tell us, well, number one, be yourself and be who you are. I take you to the year 325. Now, when I dive into history and I tell you the things that I know, and I don't know everything, I know enough to tell this story. The year 325 has been instrumental in the world. And not many people know that. Many things happened in our past that we're not aware of. In the year 325, in the part of the world that we now today call Turkey, there was a city called Constantinople, and next to that there was a city called Nicaea. And that was in the Roman time. And what happened then is that the Romans had an issue, the Roman military had a problem in conquering the European continent. And they needed a new type of weapon to enslave or conquer the people, or enslave the people of Europe. And at that time something very smart was found and invented, that at that time, in the year 325, the military and the governmental powers and also the religious power, they joined forces, and they were able to develop psychological warfare, and that was very successful. With that psychological warfare, the war spread through Europe in the 4th century. You know, in the Middle Ages in Europe, in the Middle Ages, when I talk about the word merci, what does the word merci means? Merci, it's a French word. Well, if you give something, you said thank you, merci, dank u, merci, and you take it. Well, the original use and meaning was something else, something that I find extremely beautiful. In the Middle Ages, and you may have seen this in movies, that you have the fight between knights. They have these harnesses on, they're on their horse, and with a piece of metal or wood. They're trying to kick each other off the horse. It was the contest, the fight between two knights. And now the essence of the fight, that they were not allowed to stop the fight, talk about the Middle Ages, either one of the knights would die or something else happened. And they had to keep on fighting their fight. And I like the symbol. I don't like people get killed. No, I don't. And I like the symbol about it, because in the audience watching these fights in the Middle Ages between two knights, there was a lady, a higher lady, a princess, who could use one word with which to stop the fight, with which she could say, well, I've seen enough, I want to stop the fight. And that was the word merci. Only the word merci, when given to the fighting knights, would stop the fight. I take you to the year 1244, to the south of France. And at that time, for centuries, people lived there for a long time, and mingling with the people in the south of France were a group of special people. And they were dedicated to keep people happy, to keep people healthy. They were very social people, wanting to help the community, educating the children, helping with medicines. And they were called, in the French language, bonhomme or bonne femme. Bonhomme, bonne femme, which means good people, bon, good women or good men, bonhomme, bonne femme. And they were highly respected by the community in the whole southern part of France, including the northern part of Spain. And what happened is that the rule makers at that time, especially the governmental, especially the religious rule makers at that time, they were not so happy with these bonhomme and bonne femme, which, by the way, later, much later, they were titled Cathars. And they lived in the southern part of France. It's called Languedoc. Languedoc means Languedocitan. Now what happened? The rule makers at that time were not happy at all, not very happy at all with these people. And it's a long story. What finally happened is that and they started to fight these bonhomme, bonne femme, which we could now call Cathars. And the last hundreds of these people, they would gather in a fortress in the south of France. It's called Montségur. And it's I've been there a few times. It's a beautiful fortress on a hill, invincible. It's very hard to conquer that fortress, made of stone walls of about 10-20 feet thick. And they stayed there for quite a long time, until they started to run out of food and started to run out of water. And by that, the conquerors that wanted to capture the bonhomme, bonne femme, the Cathars, they were able to conquer the fortress, and the Cathars had to surrender. And what happened? The 150 bonhomme, bonne femme, the Cathars, walked from the hill, and the conquerors had made a huge fire down the hill. And the Cathars were given a choice. They said, well, you either will obey my rules, what the conquerors say, or we will push you into the fire. And what happened is that unanimously the Cathars decided, we are not going to listen to anybody else except our own heart. And you may have our body, but you will never have our dignity. And as a group at that time, 1244, they walked voluntarily into the fire, because there's no way they were going to give their soul to the devil. And one of the last Cathars, bonhomme that walked into the fire, said before he jumped in, this is a true story, he said, well, the laurel will blossom again in 700 years. And then they walked in the fire. That's the end of that bizarre story. 700 years later. So now the Cathar, they refused to give away their essence, where they are fighting for, their purity. 700 years later, because this was a prophecy, they said, 700 years later, 1944, something else happened in world history that not many people know. I take you to the land of Egypt. And in the center of Egypt, in 1944, there's a place called Nag Hammadi. I've been in Egypt many times, and in the center there's this village. There was a peasant, a farmer, digging into the ground, and he found old books, very old books, on papyrus, written, beautiful books, and he didn't know what it was. And he started to give them away or selling them on the local market. And what happened then? Scholars, people that knew what the value was of these books, started to be aware of these books and started to watch it. And then they found out these are very, very old books. These are books that go far beyond the beginning of our times. It's from the centuries, a few centuries before we started to count time. And these book-based books, and they're still available, you can find them, part of it on the internet. These books give a pure insight in the humanity, in the history of humanity. And they also give a pure insight in the history of religions. So exactly 700 years later, 1944, the prophecy came out. It's very unknown, these books, and you could say that these books, they have the power again of that laurel, with the pure knowledge of mankind is there. They have the power to let the laurel or the bay leaf blossom again. Now, in one of the stories, we talked about it before, it's about the black and the white sheep. And in some books you have the story, well, there is this shepherd, and the shepherd has 100 white sheep. And the story says now, well, and there was one black sheep, and the black sheep escaped from the herd of 100 white sheep. And then the present interpretation of the story is that the shepherd said, "Hey, black sheep, go back to where the white sheep are." And he obeyed. The black sheep said, "Okay, well, I will go back to my white sheep family." And they lived a sort of happy life. And the book that was found in Nag Hammadi, it's the Gospel of Thomas. There's the purest version is something else. The purest version of this story says, well, there was this shepherd with 100 white sheep and one black sheep. And then the black sheep escaped. And then what happened to the shepherd and the 100 white sheep? They looked at each other, well, what about the black sheep? He has to come back. And you know what happened in the true essential story is that the shepherd said to the white sheep, "Hey, look what he is doing, the black sheep. He is escaping, he's taking control of his life. He is a good example, an excellent example of all of you. I wish you all would be a black sheep." Land of milk and honey. We know it from many books. What is the land of milk and honey? Well, we think the milk, that is a funny fantasy story about the land of milk. There's a land with a lot of milk and there's a land with a lot of honey. Funny story. Well, it's more than that. you know I'm fascinated by mythology. I'm also fascinated by symbolism. The land of milk and honey means two things, instrumental things of life. We talked last time about the duality of life. We talked about decision making with one eye closed, from what happens then. And the land of milk and honey means, the land of milk means the land of physical labor. Laboratory labor means physical work. That's the land of milk. The land of honey means the land of non-physical labor, means the land of mental labor, means the land of intuition, it means the land of art, creativity, etc., etc., all the non-physical parts. And then the books say, heaven on earth, Garden of Eden, paradise is where these two countries exist, where you have the land of milk and the land of honey working together. So physical work, logical work, and intuitive work. So that is what the essence of the story is. Well, and you can make it today. That's also what the story said. Don't wait until you die, you can make it today. Land of milk and honey is where the true heroes come to force, where the real leaders will stand up, because they will understand that we need to connect these two, the honey and land of honey and the land of milk. If you live in such a country, land, what we could make in our world, that you will be an alchemist. What is wealth? What is wealth? What is richness for you? Richness, wealth. What does it mean? Does it mean money? Does it mean success? Does it mean applause? Now, I tell you a story what happened last year, 2 years ago to me. I do entertaining show for children worldwide. And 2 years ago, I was with my good brother, Magic Tony, in Thailand. And we were doing a show for 500 kids. We have a 45 minutes entertaining theater magic show. We do it together. And we had 500 kids in Thailand watching our show. And we knew that we saw these kids, they're from a poor background. I mean, you can see that. And then we did our show, and we wanted to leave. We wanted to go away. And they said, don't go away. Don't go away. Two things had to happen. And they said they came from a poor background. And then after the show, they came with a box. They gave us a box. And then we looked into the box, and there were a lot of coins. All those 500 children. It makes me emotional when I tell it. All those 500 children gave a little bit of money in a box for us to thank us. I didn't know what to say. And you know, what I felt is I felt wealth. I felt being very, very rich. And indeed, the day after, we had a food and a drink from that money. And another thing that had to happen before the children would leave. They wanted to touch our hands, give a high five, high five, high five. This is 2 years ago. 1 year ago. And that was for me wealth. I felt I'm a billionaire here. I'm a billionaire. Another thing is that happened 1 year ago, that we did a show with Circus Spark. Tony and I were part of a circus. We were in Burma. And then we did shows for a week, all through parts of Thailand and also part of Burma. And it's a circus show. And then one day we did a show in the middle of a jungle. And there were a few hundred people, and there no luxury. And we had a car with us, and on the battery we had power to power the audio system and some lighting. And it was so simple and so non-luxury that if I look back at last year, that was the best moment, best time in my life. I felt very healthy. The children were very wealthy and rich. The children were applauding. We had nothing and we were very rich. You know where the word enthusiasm comes from? Enthusiasm. Yeah, enthusiasm. What does it mean? Yeah, enthusiasm, yeah. It's also a little bit more than that. Enthusiasm, the word means being inspired by the divine. And this is again a long story. What does that mean, being inspired by the divine? Well, musicians know when they are, and you may recognize it in your life, when they are in their tune, when they are in their frequency, like a pianist. They feel when they have two hands, they feel when they do their thing, making new music, they become the music, and they feel like they have 5 pairs of hands playing on the piano. They feel bigger, far more bigger than they actually are. So they get something from somewhere and that they feel bigger. And that is being inspired by something that's bigger than you. Call it energy, call it the divine, call it something. And we talked about this some weeks ago, that again, third time, this is a long story, that the universe is cascading energy, and the intention, as the universe has intrinsic intelligence, is cascading through the universe, is cascading the intention and the purpose of that universe. And since we are part of that universe, the universe will explode in manifestation of that energy via us. And that is that if you are yourself, know thyself, know who you are, and the Qatar want to find who am I, what am I, and if you are in tune with yourself, you feel very powerful. That means enthusiasm. You know, some years ago, I saw an interview with Jack May. Jack May, you know Jack May? He is the big chief, the big man behind the Alibaba organization in China. And Jack May said, and you can find it on YouTube, he said, the education system for our children is outdated. And we're going to enter a new era in mankind where the machines and the robots will do the physical work. Cheaper, far better, more accurate, no complaining, no wages, doesn't get sick. The machines and the robots will take over. And he said, you can see it as a bad thing. And I said, I see it as a good thing. Because we will have, you can say, well, they will steal my job. Well, yeah. From another side, we will have less work to do, and we will have more time for creativity, more time for art, more time for music, more time for investigating who you are, and more time for enjoying life as it should be. And I totally agree with Jack Ma that this is an excellent thing, because life is all about that. We'll have more time then to investigate our inner wolf that is wanting to manifest him or herself through you and me. You know, a few months ago, we used to have 4 goats here in the garden. The last one died a few months ago. Yeah, and they were part of the family. Goats are part of the family, and I've learned a lot from goats. Jump. One thing I learned from goats is the following: if we still had 4, and they lived here in the garden, if I would go to them and I want to connect with them, I want to have contact with them, and if I would go to them and running in their garden and running behind them, do you know where the goats will be? If I start running towards them, they're all over the place. They're not coming to me. And then, well, try something else. I went again in my house and went to the goats. I started to go inside their garden, silently walking, and I was going to sit on the ground and just wait. You know what happened? The goats were somewhere there and they me. And they came to me. And then the other one came to me. And then the next one. And the fourth goat came to me. That's one thing I learned from the goat. Is how to connect with people. How to connect with yourself. Be patient. Another thing is that what goats love. You know what goats love? They love, number one thing they love is eat. They love to eat. They can eat a lot of food. They want to have a full stomach and they want something else. Because when I was spreading my hand, I felt suddenly there was this head of a goat under my hand and they wanted attention, they wanted love, they wanted to be touched, they wanted to have a full heart of energy. So the goat wants a full heart with attention and a full stomach. And then the goat is happy. You know, we come to the conclusion, and the world is, as we know today, in 2021, is January 28th. It is in a crisis. It's in a personal crisis somehow. It affects your personal life. It affects your business life. It's a global crisis that's happening. And crisis is as old as mankind. It's as old as the universe. Because crisis is connected with chaos. And there's always a guarantee. If there's chaos, there will come order. If there's order, there will become chaos. So the guarantee that sometime from now, the chaos of the crisis will be gone and the order will be there. What does it, in my opinion, and that's my takeaway, my giveaway, your takeaway, what does it require from us, from all of us to do? In order from crisis, chaos to go to an order situation that we all want, and we can steer that. What it requires from us, from you and me, is to be a hero. Is to stand up for what's right for you. It's to listen to your heart. Is to become a leader. Is to become an example in your group, your family. Children don't listen to what you say. They watch what you do. They will copy your behavior. And we all have this potential to be an alchemist. To create this land of milk and honey. To create prosperity and growth. So this is an inner calling for all of us. To stand up and see what you can do in your life to make this world a better place. I want you to become a black sheep. I want me to become a black sheep. I want us to become a goat. Have a full stomach and a full heart. Wouldn't it be beautiful if we listen to this inner wolf in you and all of us, and we make connection with who we truly are, and from this perspective we start to reinvent, remake the world, listening to our heart. Could we make a world, and then the example of the Qatar in the 13th century, the year 1245, could we learn from them? Could this be a moment that we learn from the Qatar? That you should never ever give your soul to the devil, of doing something against your will. Could we do that? Could we, out of respect that 150 Qatar in 1244 voluntarily gave their life so that the laurel, the bay leaf, will blossom again? so that our pilot light will never go out, irrelevant of the circumstances where you are. We need to keep the pilot light burning. And could we make another prophecy for you in your situation and I my situation, that we will find a way to let the laurel blossom again. Now my last thing I want to tell you on this Friday. Enjoy the day. Be human. And never ever stop working for a better world until you are mercied. And then the final part is get to work, because we need to create a world that we all love and want to have. Thank you.